Well, good evening, everyone. Uh, Tonight we're going to do chapters, what is it, 29, 28? I should know these things. 29 through 33. But I want to do a brief summary, okay? I want to do a brief summary. And just because even though I would hope that you remember the details that have gone before, sometimes I feel it's good to remind you. So we're going to do the Jacob story, which you should have read these chapters, these chapters. But now just remember, how did Jacob get into this predicament? Okay, so I'm recalling back in chapter 27. Just read you a quick blurb. Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. This is Rebekah talking to Jacob. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger against you turns away and he forgets what you have done to him. Okay, so him fleeing. Now they're gonna lie to Isaac and say, well, he needs to get a wife and so on and so forth, and therefore he needs to go and marry one from his family and so on and so forth. That's going to be the ruse. Now, what I always want you to remember is when people are lying, no matter who it is, okay, remember the lying background or the content behind the details behind the background. Okay, so it's just an important factoid, because sometimes there's a lot of lying going on in these and what's coming up here. A lot of lying and deceit and whatnot, because that's the very definition of the name Jacob, right? Usurper, cunning, sly, and so you're going to see that thread's going to happen, and then of course you're going to see it how Laban also is lying back and forth, and so it's a contest of liars actually to see who gets the best of who. And I say this because this is the character that is being presented to us. Now, there will be one redeeming moment, but that is chapter 32, 33. Okay, so anyway, so just to remember that. Now, remember we introduced and we talked about Isaac last week. And the strange thing about Isaac is he almost has no personality. We absolutely know there's nothing extraordinary about him. He lives the easiest life of everyone we've had so far, right? You know, he's the promise, the child of the promise, you know, therefore the one who's going to, you know, receives the blessing and the promise of future nations and descendants and whatnot. So that's the important link. He doesn't leave the land. He relaxes. Abraham sends his servant to go fetch him a wife. Everything's fine. He comes back. He doesn't have to do anything. It's all being done for him. Okay, if you will, easy street. The only problem Isaac comes into is in his old age, when he prefers the oldest son, and Rebekah, the mother, prefers the younger son, and then the clash between the two siblings then is the whole context for what we're going to be reading. So just remember that. And someone pointed out to me, that person shall remain nameless, but it's a good point, is that the most extraordinary person so far, my opinion, in the text is a nameless servant. If you recall what we read about Abraham sending his oldest servant to go on this expedition to find a wife and so on, you find this glimmer of pure faithfulness. Okay, just doing. He's not even named and whatnot. I say that just to remark, because often, certainly in the Gospels, you have these nameless people. And I think that's intent. We had one 2 weeks ago on Sunday about the woman with the flow of blood and so on. And ultimately, she's an example of faith. You have the nameless centurion, the previous chapter. Okay, it's just as an example. It happens in the scripture. These nameless people, they're not sort of singled out with any legacy, with any children, with any greatness and so on, but they're images of faithfulness. Anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that out. So we're going to begin tonight with chapter 29. And remember, Jacob is leaving the land and he has this strange vision, okay? Strange vision with a deity, the God, so on and so forth. That is his exit, because Because if you're leaving the land, and I would just want to pound this into your memory banks, when you leave the promised land, it is functionally an exile. Okay, you're outside of the promised land. Okay, not just your personal homeland, but the idea of promise. Okay, the idea of blessedness, and that's why Isaac always stands as the simplest patriarch of blessedness. He's always there. He doesn't have any crisis and whatnot. He's just there. Okay, he's just there enjoying its fruitfulness. Okay, so let's read chapter 29. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field and 3 flocks of sheep lying there beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. You've seen this in the previous story of getting a wife for Isaac. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Okay, repetition, we've had it before. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" They said, "We do." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" "Yes," they replied. "And here is his daughter, Rachel, coming with the sheep." Same story as Rebekah. He said, "Look, it is still broad daylight. It is not time for the animals to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together," blah, blah, blah. Verse 9. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came from her father's sheep, for she kept them. Now when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, and the sheep of his mother's brother Laban, Jacob went up, rolled the stone away from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of his mother's brother Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. When Laban heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him, embraced him, and kissed him, brought him to his house, told Laban all these things. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Okay. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Okay. So they're entering into negotiations. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were lovely, and Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Pitter patter goes his heart. Okay. Now, what I want you to know is this word serve. It's the same word as to be a slave. Okay. So Jacob has negotiated. Now, think of the negotiation that the servant had with Laban's father, Nahor. Was very simple and clean. Come, go, they're out of there in less than 2 weeks. Okay. So Jacob has to be a slave to get his bride, the one he's most in love with. Okay, so that's just, again, things are coming full circle for Jacob. In other words, you know, as the young people say, karma's a bitch. Sooner or later, you're going to have to pay for your sins. So it gets juicier if you haven't read it, but I'm assuming you have. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. In the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me?" See, did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me? Okay, so again, the rascal, the deceiver, is now being deceived. This is why I said about karma being the bitch thing. Okay, everything about Jacob, it's coming back to haunt him. Okay, and now he's crying foul. He didn't cry foul when he stole his brother's birthright or his blessing, and basically took him out of any kind of inheritance. So why then have you deceived me? This is key. Laban said, this is not done in our country, given the younger before the firstborn. Okay, this is another slam, so catch it. Okay, because Jacob had usurped the firstborn. Okay, he had broke not just protocol, but that which is correct, place, order, and he's doing it again. Okay, he's doing it again. So complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Okay, so now he still wants his Rachel. Okay, being Twitter paid, it has a cost. Let's just throw that out there for past and future reference. Okay, go watch Bambi again. I think that's where that phrase comes from. Anyway, so he's got to serve another 7 years, slave. Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife, and the maid as well. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. This is another key. Okay, he served Laban for another 7 years. So there we have it. So we see again how the themes and the repetitions and the stories are overlapping and connecting. So when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. The problem of barrenness has been systematic. Remember Abram and Sarah, and then the whole problem of Sarah trying to manipulate things and give Avram Hagar and whatnot. And we saw it also with Rebecca being barren, and Isaac just prayed, and the problem was solved. Okay, so Rachel's given the blessing of a son because she was being dismissed and unloved. She named him Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has looked on my affliction, and surely now my husband will love me. Okay, the name Reuben means God has seen, and behold, a son has been born. Okay, so God has seen, behold, a son. She conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. He named him Simeon. Simeon's actually a nice name because it means having been heard, or one who is hearing, one who is listening. So God was listening again. So now we know Simon Peter in the gospel, and his name is very important because he gets a name change, right? But we won't go there, but just to notice the understanding of the name. So again, she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be joined to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi. Okay? Levi means to praise. So she conceived and bore a son again, and this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore, she named him Judah, and then she ceased bearing. Okay, so 4 sons, all because she's being unloved and God is compensating. Because the idea is the progeny. Okay, to whom is the blessing going to be passed on to? Okay, so you have Abraham to Isaac. Skip Esau, goes to the younger one, Jacob, so on and so forth. So you have this pattern. Hold on.
What'd you say?
You're muted. You need to.
No.
There we go. So this is, again, the family strife, okay, is continuing. You had the family strife with Abraham and that whole thing. You had some strife with Isaac and so on. And now you're going to see the continuing theme of the family strife that is going to unmake and cause all kinds of problems. So we have the problem of Rachel, the beloved wife, but she's barren, okay? She's barren. So when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Okay? Now, you need to remember that statement because she will die. But that's just the first, and you don't recognize its importance until it repeats itself and then it happens. Okay, give me children or I shall die. So the worst possible desperation. Jacob became very angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Okay, so at least he acknowledges that the issue ultimately is with God and punishment. Then she said, here is my maid, Bilhah, go into her. See, Hagar all over again, and Sarah. That she may bear up on my knees, that I too may have children through her. So she gave her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob would enter, and Bilhah conceived, and she bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me, and has also heard my voice, and given me a son. Therefore she named him Dan, which means judgment, okay, or to judge. Now, the irony is that she's claiming, okay, she's making a claim about God. Okay? And what I want you to point out is just because someone makes a claim about God doesn't mean that it is factual, okay? This is her perception. He has judged me, has heard my voice, and given me a son. No, she manipulated the situation. Okay? Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she named him Naphtali, which means cunning, twisting, sort of like Jacob all over again. Okay? So what I want you to see is the beginning conflict in the family. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her maid Zilpah, gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, good fortune. So she named him Gad. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the woman will call me happy. So she named him Asher, okay, which is the meaning of the name, happiness, joy. Okay, so you see again this strange story. Okay, and you see Jacob is just sort of like a patsy between his wives, okay, and now, of course, his extended wives. He's just a progenitor, nothing more. In the days of the harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field, brought them to his mother Leah. Okay, follow the repetition here. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Sort of reminds you of the negotiation that happened between the hungry Esau and Jacob, okay, when he sold his birthright for a bowl of lentils. Okay, so please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, it is a small matter that you have taken away my husband. The theme remains. Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Okay. When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. Okay. So he lay with her that night, and God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God has given me my hire, because I have gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again, she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good dowry. Now my husband will honor me, because I have borne him six sons. So she named him Zebulun, to exalt. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah, like her brother Dan, means judgment. Okay. So, verse 22, and then we can finally say, at last, God remembered Rachel. Okay? I like the euphemism. God remembered. Okay, he's finally going to, throw her the crumbs off the table. And God heeded her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. Similar response with Sarah when she finally had Isaac. And she named him Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. Okay, so that's what the name Joseph means, to be added, something that is given to you. When Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Excuse me. When Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. Okay. So to emphasize the point that Jacob has functionally been a slave in Laban's house, functionally. But Laban said to him, if you will allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it. Back to the earlier when he said, you've been with me 30, name your wages. Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I have served you, how your cattle have fared with me, for you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? He said, what shall I give you? Jacob said, you shall not give me anything if you will do this for me. I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep. This is a strange story. And every black lamb and the spotted and the speckled among the goats. And such shall be my wages. Now, catch verse 31. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. In other words, he wants recognizable goats, the speckled and the spotted and the black ones. Okay, so to show that he is an honest person. Now, we already know that there's nothing honest about Jacob. Okay, we already know. And there's really not much honest about Laban either. Okay. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and the blacks and the black among the lambs found with me shall be counted stolen. So Laban said, good, let it be as you have said. But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. He set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. Okay, so they're both cunning. Okay, so remove the ones so they don't procreate, and therefore they belong to Laban and not Jacob. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods, blah blah blah. So anyway, it's a story of how they breed. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods. So the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs into the faces of the flocks were the striped and the completely black animals in the flock, blah, blah, blah. Whenever the stronger the flock. Anyway, it's the whole point of Jacob tricking Laban and getting the animals, all the babies to have speckled, spotted, or black. Okay, so thus, I'm jumping down because I want to hurry to verse 33. Thus the man grew exceedingly rich and had large flocks, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. Okay, so Jacob has acquired great wealth. Not only does he have sons now, and now he has wealth. But notice in this instance, the wealth is acquired through manipulation, through cunning, through trickery. Okay, notice that's it. Okay, so when Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, he has gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. Okay. Then, so just similar, Jacob had, I read it at the beginning, Jacob had to flee for his life because of what he did to his brother. Now he's going to have to flee because of what he's tricking and doing to his father-in-law. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to this land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you. This is good news. Okay, his exile is soon to end. So Jacob sent and called Rachel, Leah into the field where his flock was and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me as favorably as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me. Okay, cheated me, he's claiming foul. Changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. See, Jacob, the twister. The speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock bore speckled. And if he said the striped, then shall all your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. So this is what I like to call when you play the God card as part of your argumentation, okay? Which basically means the person who you're arguing has to argue with God, okay? Because you're claiming it's all of God's work, and therefore I'm innocent. I can wash my hands of it, okay? Pilate washing his hands. This is not my business. You take care of it. Anyway, whatever. That's not the point. The point is Jacob is going to have to flee. During the meeting of the flock, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats had leaped upon the flock, were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in a dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the goats that leap on the flock are striped, speckled, and mottled. For I've seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Israel. I'm the God of Bethel, which is the God that he met before he left the land. Okay? Now, whether true or not, this is Jacob. We're not told God did any of this. Just leave it there. And okay, now leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth. So this is what he's doing. But follow what's going to happen because it is pivotal. Then Rachel and Leah answered him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and he has been using up the money given for us. All the property that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. Okay, so his wives agree, okay? That they also feel disenfranchised and now justified for what's going to happen. Okay, think of, Adam justifying himself. Well, it's the woman and so on and so forth. She caused me to do it. So Jacob arose and set his children and his wives on camels, and he drove them away all his livestock, all the property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he acquired in Pada Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban. This is another point. Verse 19. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. Okay, this is an important statement. Okay, because according to custom, leadership of the family and legitimate claim came through the possession of the household gods. In other words, she's saying she is legitimate and the heir, and she's taking her father's gods. So she also is stealing from him in the name of our inheritance that has been robbed from us. So she's also a deceiver. Jacob deceived Laban. Now it's said in the text, okay, he's done this before, the Aramean, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream by night and said to him, take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad. Okay. So Laban has been warned. Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. Okay, again, do we believe him? We can't believe anything he says, nor can we believe anything that Jacob says. It's just, why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Because we all want to appear like we're righteous. What you have done is foolish. It is in my power to do to you harm. Sounds like Pilate. But God of your father spoke to me last night. Similar to Pilate's wife, if you know the story. Don't have anything to do with this man. I had it in a dream, right? Take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. So, even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house, okay, that wasn't the reason. Why did you steal my gods? Okay, this is an important point in the story. Jacob said to Laban, because I was afraid. For I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. See? So he's not the trusting one in the promise that God would bring him back as he said he would in the beginning of chapter 28. No. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. Okay. So Jacob unwittingly condemns his beloved wife to death. He doesn't know it, okay? But it's to happen in childbirth. So anyway, so it's a point. So I just wanted you to follow this other thread, okay? Anyone with whom you find your God shall not live. In the presence of our kinsfolk, point out what I have that is yours and take it. So Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. Laban went into Jacob's tent, to Leah's tent, and the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Okay, now you got to appreciate when humor happens in the biblical text. You really have to appreciate it, because this is the writer ridiculing the whole idea of the idols and their importance. Okay, so Rachel is sitting on the household gods, this important sort of cultic item. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of woman is upon me. It's a monthly cycle, whatever. So that even makes it more humorous, because it's desecrating them. So he searched, but did not find the household gods. So Rachel also was lying and deceiving, and a thief. Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? See, I love it when someone who is guilty proclaims their innocence, and they do it quite loudly. Although you have felt about through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? See it here before my kinsfolk, your kinsfolk, that you may decide between us two. These 20 years, see, 7, and now an extra 6. I have been with you. Your ewes, your female goats have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flock, that which was torn by wild beasts. Blah blah blah. It's again his justification. It was like this one with me. Anyway, these 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac, had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction, the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. So in my book, Jacob's a little bit self-righteous, okay? A little bit self-righteous. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about their children who have born? Okay. Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I. Let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar, and Jacob said to his kinsfolks, gather stones, and they took stones and made a heap, and they ate by the heap. Laban called it whatever, and Jacob called it Galid. This heap is a witness between you and me today. The Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you ill-treat my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, though no one else is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me. So they make a truce. Okay? They have the witness. So again, it can verify, I will not pass beyond this heap to you, you will not pass beyond this heap, and this pillar to me for harm. May the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of our father, judge between us. So Jacob swore, he offered a sacrifice, called his kinsmen to eat bread, and they ate bread and carried all night. Early in the morning, Laban rose, he kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them, and he departed and returned home. Okay. So first hurdle is cleared. Okay, he's made it out of Haran, on his way to the land of Canaan, the promised land, away from exile. Okay, so but now he's got another problem. Another problem. So again, we're seeing Jacob is going to constantly be tested. Okay, and his past is always haunting him, or bird dogging him, chasing him. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, and he said, this is God's camp. So he called the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. let's for the sake of modern history, let's say Transjordan, the Jordanian area. Okay. So he has the problem of his brother. Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have lived with Laban as an alien, okay, a foreigner, stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, males and female slaves. I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight. Okay. Has Esau's anger tempered in 20 years, or is it still hot? Does he want his revenge? The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him, an army. Jacob was afraid, distressed. He divided the people that were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two companies, thinking if Esau comes to the one company and destroys it, then the company that is left will escape. Okay? This is the key, insight into Jacob. Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, and I will do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to me, your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two companies. Deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He may come and kill us all, the mothers with the children. Yet you have said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered and be counted because of their number. Okay, so he's finally brought to his knees for a moment, okay? And he's still afraid because of his past, right? Because of his past sins. He spent that night there. And from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milch camels, their colts, so on and so forth. Then he delivered into the hand of his servants every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me, put a space between drove and drove. He instructed the foremost, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And who are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau. And moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third and all his followers who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with a present that goes ahead of me. And afterwards I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he spent the night in the camp. Okay. So he's doing all that he can, strategizing, figuring it out, trying to buy the forgiveness of his brother, because he can't imagine anything other than revenge, okay? Which is a indirect way of confessing his sinful past. The same night he got up and took his 2 wives, 2 maids, his 11 children, crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And he took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything he had. This is a very important part coming. This is the key point to the whole thing we've been reading. And so he crossed, and likewise everything that he had, Jacob was left alone. This is the point. Everybody has crossed the Jabbok River. Everything is sort of ordered as a whole sort of organized military parade, and Jacob is by himself. Okay, Jacob is by himself. So now comes one of the more stranger stories. Because we don't see it coming. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Okay? So this mysterious man. I like this word wrestle in Hebrew because it comes from the word to get dusty. In other words, they're brawling in the dirt. Okay. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he, the man, struck Jacob on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Okay. So Jacob is permanently injured. Then he said, let me go, for the day is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Okay? So we know nothing about this man. We're not told. But Jacob recognizes that he is the greater, because again, it's only the lesser who asks for the blessing of the greater. And when that gets flipped upside down, it doesn't make any sense. For example, so it's a bit of an aside, but I was once visiting a very old 90-year-old priest. And at the end of our 20-minute conversation, of which I remember every word, he, the older priest, asked the younger priest, 40 years he's there, for his blessing. And it was like, no, this is not, but it was a sign of this man's great sanctity and humility. But I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? Jacob's asking this man. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So the man said to him, what is your name? And he answered, Jacob. Then the man said, you shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Okay? For you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed. Okay? Now this is, anytime we've had name changes already. We had Avram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah, and now we have it here, a name change, which means a change in status. Okay, a change in status. So Jacob, when he's acting like Jacob, is bad news. Okay, when he's acting like Israel, it's good news. Okay, just put that. You know, it's the Jekyll Hyde personality of this. Okay, of this of person. Okay? So he's gotten a new name, which means he has striven with God and with humans and has prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, what is it that you ask my name? And then there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. So now the linkage of the man as if he was God himself. Okay, and he wrestled with God. But finally he had been tested. Okay, he had been tested. Now, because the idea of seeing God face to face, whenever you have it in the Bible, it also implies judgment. Okay, he has passed through judgment and survived for another day. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Okay, so my point is you have to connect this event. When he was exiting the land in chapter 28, he had an event at Beit El and a promise that he would come back. And now you have an example of another encounter with this strange God, which is very odd because it's night, it's dark, it's sort of doesn't express hiddenness, okay? And that he's coming back in. And his only way to get into the land is not as the sly, cunning, manipulating Jacob, but as Israel. Okay, as Israel. Israel is the key, not the nation Israel, forget about it, the person, the one who has had this encounter and survived, albeit he's limping. Okay, albeit, but he got the blessing. Okay, and if you don't understand the importance of a blessing, then reread again the whole story of God blessing Abraham and then Isaac blessing Jacob and so on. The blessing is the promise, is the future, is the legacy that's being passed on. Okay, so, but it's being passed on not as Jacob, but as Israel. Because as we continue to read the rest of the story of Jacob, when he's acting as Jacob, it's bad news. Okay, it's bad news. He's back to his old ways. He's back to being Mr. Hyde instead of Jekyll. Okay, so anyway, so this strange story of exile, and how are you going to get in if you're Jacob? Everybody else is already across the river and sort of in their lineup out of fear of Esau, and now you have Jacob, now Israel. Okay, so let's do 33. That was our plan tonight. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. He divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids, and he put the maids with their children in front. Sorry, they're just maids. Then Leah with her children, okay, because she's not the favorite. And then Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, fell on his neck, kissed him, and they wept. Okay, come on. What do you remember from the New Testament? This comes straight out of Luke, and the prodigal son uses this story to talk about the father coming out, you see, and accepting the prodigal son. It's the same thing, only this is the original story. Okay. Kissed him and they wept. When Lisa looked up and saw the women and the children, he said, "Whose are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near and their children, and they bowed down. Likewise, Leah and her children drew near and bowed down. Finally, Joseph and Rebekah drew near and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all of this company that I met?" Jesus answered, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough. My brother, keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I find favor with you, and then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God," which apparently he just saw in the previous chapter. "Since you have received me with such favor, please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt gracious with me and because I have everything I want." So he urged him and he took it. Okay. So what Jacob could not imagine was the loving, forgiving embrace. Okay. And this even heightens, if you will, the shame of Jacob, okay? The shame and the fear of Jacob, not knowing that Esau is an example of forgiveness and humility. Even though he's been rendered sort of disowned by his father. "Father, do you not even have a blessing for me? Just one something, as he's weeping and whatnot, okay, in the previous chapters. So he could not imagine this kind of graciousness, because it's not in him. It's not in him. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." But Jacob says, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me, and if they are overdriven for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to Seir." Jacob still doesn't trust his brother. That's his flaw. He still doesn't believe that someone is capable of such kindness and forgiveness. Okay, that is his flaw, and it's our flaw too. Sometimes we don't give it a chance, or other people to surprise us with joy. Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the place is called Succoth. So Jacob himself, still as much as he wants, is unsure and untrusting. Okay? Untrusting. But he is back in the land, and that's the important part. Verse 18, Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Pada Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money a plot of land on which he pitched his tent. And there he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel. Now, what I want you to remember, and you couldn't remember it because you would shock me, this place, Shechem, this city, is the first place that Abraham came to back in chapter 12 when all of this began. So what I want to point out is there's been a complete full circle. To this point, we are back to where it all began and starting again. We've had many times in the Bible, it's all about starting, falling, starting again, falling, starting again. Okay, so that's where the story. So he has returned, and now he actually owns a piece of land. Remember that the only piece of land owned before was a burial plot for Abraham and Sarah. Okay, but now another plot of land in this city that now is his, if you will, his toehold. He has a place to put his tent. Okay, So now the question is, now that he's back in the land, and of course we're stopping here for the evening, now that he's back in the land, what's going to happen? Okay. Will he enjoy the blessedness that Isaac got to enjoy, as flat and as nameless as Isaac was? Okay. Or will disaster continue? We already know that disaster is going to continue, but you will see it when you read chapter 34, the nature and the heinous crimes that were going to be committed by Jacob's children, showing that nothing has changed substantially. Okay. And again, we're following the storyline. You have the sinful story of Adam, and it's picked up in Cain, and it continues in the dissolute people before the story of Noah, and then the destruction. The dissolute people again, the Tower of Babel and whatnot, destruction. And now, you start again with Abraham, you start again with Isaac, it's passed on. And then you have Jacob, who has a foot in both camps. Okay. The camp of the promise, the divine promise, the word, how is God going to salvage something of his creation and restore it? And then the human story of just human sinfulness and greed and lust and envy and so on and so forth. Okay. And so what I want you to see is that these two paths, these two lines are going to continue. Okay. And then you're going to have people that go back and forth on them, Jacob being the more complex one. Okay. And you're going to see how that plays itself out in the story of his children, which is the rest of the story of the Bible. Okay, it's the rest of the story of the Bible. Okay, and so anyway, there is football tonight. Let me put this recording because those that listen do not need to talk about.